I'm Dr. Joe Brickner. I'm here today to talk about career changes. I experienced one myself. It was a drastic career change, and I wrote a book about it. It was called So You Want to Be a Coach, and it's the story of my going from being a corporate executive, and at the age of 50, I switched careers. I became a head college men's basketball coach at my alma mater. Huge change, but it was my dream job. And even though I loved my career that I had going at Southwestern Bell, this was one that I just couldn't pass up. And what I'd like to do with you today is share some of the things that I learned going through that process and give you some tips on maybe some things you might consider. I'd recommend that if you do want to look into my book and reading the book itself, that's great. But I also spawned a podcast that's called Building with Brick. And Building with Brick interviews people who have had successful careers. A couple of them have changed careers, and it'd be well worth your time, I think, to listen to these. They're in-depth interviews. The way I work it is we talk for probably an hour and a half or so, and then I break it up into 4 pieces, and each piece then is offered each successive week. And there are things that you might want to listen to just to get a feel for what's it take to be a success. And all of the people that I've interviewed so far have been great successes. And like I say, some of them actually switched careers. So that's something you might consider. But let's get on with the program here. And I'll share a screen with you that will help you follow exactly how we're going to move through this. If you're dreaming of a career change, and so many of us do, I mean, there's no doubt. Probably, my guess is 60-75% of people would rather be doing something else than what they're doing. But they're in a position that they either can't or they're afraid to take the risk, etc. And I want to walk you through the steps, if I can, that I had documented in my book. And I'm going to glean from that those things that I think are most important for you to consider if you're thinking about changing your career. And I break that down into basically 3 steps. First, I think what we need to do is define a couple of things. What's the difference between a job and a career? A job is the work that a person does regularly in order to earn money. I mean, we all have jobs, but we all don't have careers. I give you a definition: duty, task, function, etc. that something or someone has is the Merriam-Webster definition for it. Some examples are a waiter, a mechanic, bookkeeper, those types of things would most of the time be considered jobs. Now, you can get confused between a job and a career. So the definition for a career is a profession or occupation chosen as one's life's work. And that's the key. It's something that you choose to do for your entire life. It's something that you really want to do in most cases. Examples: a dentist, accountant, plumber, chef, and kind of put it into perspective, the difference between a job and a career. If somebody asked you, what do you do? And you said, I'm a cook. Well, that's a job. But if they said, what do you do? And you say, I'm a chef, that's a career. So kind of keep that in mind as we move forward in the process here of saying what a career is and how do you make a career change. Let's define what a career change is. So when a person moves to a totally different profession or occupation, and normally it involves special training of some sort. Examples: a musician becomes a computer programmer. And you think, oh, that's not going to happen. Well, interestingly, when I worked for Southwestern Bell, we were hiring programmers at the time, and musicians were some of the people that we were really looking hard at. Their aptitude on the music side lended itself so well to what it took to become a computer programmer. So that one's not a huge stretch. An accountant becomes a plumber. I've got a story or two that I can tell on that actually happening with a couple of people that had worked for me at Southwestern Bell. And a corporate executive becomes a college basketball coach. Now, that's really a stretch. But every once in a while, dreams come true and that happens. Here are the 3 steps that make a career change happen for you to reach that dream job that you're looking for. Number 1, do it for the right reasons. And I'll get into the specifics of, what are some of the right reasons or what are some of the wrong reasons to make a career change. Secondly, build a foundation for success. Now, you can't just jump from one career to another. It's just not going to happen. You have to have a foundation built that allows you to make that transition. And I'm going to go through the step-by-step process that you need to actually perform in order to build that foundation. And then the last item is give it 100% effort. Your heart's got to be totally in it. You got to give it everything you've got. And if you do, chances are that you're going to be successful in making that career change. Let's talk first about step 1. Do it for the right reasons. In my book, I've got a number of lessons that I document. And a lesson is found at the end of every chapter. There's 13 chapters, so there's 13 lessons. In chapter 12, my lesson is you only have one life to fulfill your dream. Don't waste it. So if you have that dream and you have an opportunity to pursue it, by all means, give it extremely serious consideration, and I hope you choose to move forward on that. My book also is filled with quotes. I enjoy reading quotes, and the way I used them in my book was I'd come up with a quote, and then the following section behind it was related to that quote. Here's one that I had from Confucius, and it's not a new one to you. You've heard this many times. Choose a job you love, and you never have to work a day in your life. And that's really true. When I went from being a basketball coach, from being a corporate executive to a basketball coach, I just loved what I was doing as a basketball coach. And it wasn't work to me. There's a lot of work to it, a tremendous amount of work to it, but it wasn't work. It's what I wanted to do. It was my passion. Here are some of the right reasons you make a career change. Maybe you have a dream or a passion to do something particular in life. Mine was to be a coach. Could have the basic aptitude to be successful at your dream job. You're currently not in the right lane. That happens quite often. I think that you actually get involved in something that you get kind of in a groove, and you don't look at other opportunities, or you give up on what you really want to do. So are you in the right lane? You got to ask yourself that question. Fourth, you want to find a good work-life balance. There are many, many jobs out there today where there's not a good work-life balance, and you may have to change careers in order to find that balance that you're looking for. And then finally, your core values don't fit with the current career path. I think we're finding this more and more as America seems to be changing and polarizing. And so this may be a position that you find yourself in today, and a career change is something that you give serious thought to. Here's some wrong reasons. You don't like your current role, or you don't like your current boss, you don't like your current culture. Don't let those be the reasons why you switch careers. These might be really good reasons why you switch jobs, but not careers. And switching jobs may mean leaving the company you're in and pursuing a position in another company doing something very similar to what you have been doing for your career up to that point. But don't choose to change your career just because you don't like your current boss or whatever. Another reason that not to change careers would be you're overreacting to a negative event at work. Now, you say, well, what type of thing are you talking about? Well, let's say that you're up for promotion and you really think you got a great job, a great opportunity to get that promotion, but you don't. You don't get it. Somebody else gets it. And worse yet, you and your personal opinion, don't think they're as qualified as you are. Really tough. And that happens a lot. So, what do? Well, don't change your careers. Again, you might change your job, because especially if this person gets the job and they become your boss, it might be a real tough go to have a relationship that's positive. And so you might consider changing jobs, but don't change your career. If you're doing what you like, stick with your career. Look for a job change. Another one, you're obsessed with a hobby. Maybe you like to fish. Can you make any money at fishing? Can you put bread on the table? Probably not. There are a few that do. I know they're professional fishermen, but boy, that's really, really stretching it. So even though you're obsessed with a hobby, you sometimes can't consider that to be a career. You're bored in your current position. Again, this happens a lot, but sometimes I think, and a lot of times I think, it's because of your own fault. Maybe you're not pursuing your position the way it really needs to be pursued. Maybe you're not trying to make improvements on a daily basis, more efficiency, more customer service, those types of things. Are you really trying to make this the best thing it can possibly be? And if you are, you're probably not bored. You're probably working hard at it. And finally, you're not happy with your pay. Don't switch careers because of that. So you can switch jobs, change companies, whatever. That'd be a good idea. But if you like what you're doing, but you're not being paid what you'd like to get, seek out another company or another organization. Here's some inspirational quotes that kind of relate to step one. George Lucas said, "Dreams are extremely important. You can't do it unless you imagine it." And if you imagine you're being in a new career, that's the first step in helping you move in that direction. And I like this second one. Albert Einstein, who was brilliant, obviously, but he was more than just a scientist. He said, everything that can be counted does not necessarily count. Everything that counts not necessarily be counted. If you think about that a while, it really makes a lot of sense. The third one's the one I probably like the most. Success isn't just about what you accomplish in your life. It's about what you inspire others to do. And I really found that true not only when I was in my dream job, my coaching job, but I found that same thing true when I was working at Southwestern Bell as the assistant treasurer. I just loved helping people get to where they wanted to go. And that was one of the conversations I had with every subordinate. Where do you want to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? What's your dream job? It's surprising how effective those types of questions can be in getting people to open up and actually start moving in that direction where they can go where they really want to go. And then Abraham Lincoln's, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what we're talking about today. Can you create your future? Step 2, build the foundation. This is probably the most important part, the most important step. In my book, in chapter 1, right off the bat, the lesson that I have at the end of that chapter is, in order to be available when the dream job opportunity presents itself, strive to pre-build the foundation required to be a candidate. There are a lot of things that I had to have in place long before I would ever be considered for a head basketball coach, especially at the college level. That just doesn't happen very often. And there were many, many things that I did along the way throughout my life that prepared me to be in a position to be a candidate. And that's what you have to do. You have to have enough that makes you interesting to the person who's actually doing the hiring. Not easy to do sometimes, and sometimes it takes a long, long time. Hopefully, in your case, it doesn't, but it may take 6 months to a year, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. One of the quotes that I like is from Goethe. It says, "If you miss the first buttonhole, you will not succeed in buttoning up your coat." And that has so much to say about building a foundation. If you don't have a good foundation, your building's going to crumble. And you don't want to get into an interview process and your building crumbles. Make sure your foundation's solid. And we'll talk about what that all involves. There are four things that I think that you need to consider when you're building that foundation. The first is do a personal SWOT analysis. Now, if you had any college business courses, you've probably done a SWOT analysis. And SWOT simply stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths and weaknesses are geared to you. The opportunities and threats are geared to the career that you're trying to pursue or the company or the industry that you're looking at. Second item is create a roadmap and a timeline. Very critical that you do this. You have to document where you're going to go and how you're going to get there and how long it's going to take. Third one is seek a mentor. And I'll talk about this a little more in detail also. But it'll make it much easier if you actually have a mentor helping you along the way. And then fourth, develop a fallback position if it doesn't work. If your career switch doesn't happen, or you actually get in that career and you find out it's really not what you thought it was, have that fallback position built in so that you can move into that position and still be able to put food on the table. So, item one of that, do a personal SWOT analysis. Here you want to do an analysis saying, okay, what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And I've listed here for you about 6 different items that you want to consider strengths and weaknesses, your personal strengths and weaknesses. Number one is financial status. Are you in a position to go without a paycheck for 6 months to a year? You know, it may take that long. Now, when you do your timeline, you'll kind of figure out how long you think it's going to take for you to be able to make this career change. But really, really dig into your financial status. You know, what can you do maybe to cut expenses? Maybe you'd have to continue working at your present job until a period of time later on when you've done what the second bullet point says, gain that knowledge base that you're needed for your dream job. So what are your strengths and weaknesses? Are you strong financially or not for you and your family? Second, your knowledge base of the dream job. And if you don't have that knowledge base, if that's a weakness, you have to go get it. You can't get into an interview process and say, yeah, I don't have the knowledge base, but I know that I can pick it up quickly. And they're going to say, well, that's really nice, but we've got 9 other candidates who have the knowledge base. They don't need to pick it up quickly. Third, the skills, the talents, and the aptitudes. If you don't have the skills and talents for that position that you're going after, you need to gain those. And I'll talk a little bit about how you might go about doing that a little bit later. The aptitudes, hopefully you have the aptitude for that position. But if you don't, I'd say err on the side of risking it. If that's something you really believe that you want to do, but when you're looking at yourself, say, I don't have quite the aptitude for that position, I've found that many times people who didn't have the aptitude, if they had the work ethic, they still were successful. So think about that. And again, on all of these items, you've got to be honest. You may want to bring in a friend, a close friend, or a colleague or two to say, this is how I see me in all these areas. How do you see me? Because they're probably going to see you in a different light. And they may be able to shed some information, shed some light on it, on the fact that maybe you're stronger than you think you are in certain areas, or maybe you're weaker. So getting a third opinion, a second or third opinion, could be very valuable. Fourth item is family relationships. Family relationships are maybe one of the most difficult to deal with, because you may have a passion or dream, and that's dream and passion is not shared by your spouse or your children if you have a family. And you got to think about all of these things up front. You got to discuss it and say, okay, this is what I want to do. These are the hardships we're going to go through. Are you willing to do that or not? The last thing you want to do is break up a family because you're chasing some career or some dream, and it's just not providing for your family, not only on the physical side, but on the mental and the spiritual side. So family relationships are very important. And then the last two, physical health and spiritual health. If you're in good physical and spiritual health, you're probably going to be able to weather the tough times. If you're not, it's going to be really difficult. So analyze that. Is this a strength or is this a weakness? On the other side of the coin is you want to look at your chosen field's opportunities and threats. I'd start with the industry. Assess the competitive structure of that industry. Are there a lot of firms that are really competitive, or just a few firms, one or two firms that dominate that industry? Your chances, in my opinion, of being able to switch careers is better if there are a lot of firms. If there's a lot of competition, people are always looking for good people, good managers, good technicians, what have you. And sometimes when there's just one or two companies that dominate that area, they aren't going to give you a break. Whereas if there are a lot of companies, they'll say, maybe this guy doesn't have the exact background we're looking for, or this gal, maybe she doesn't have the background we're looking for, but we really like the work ethic, we like the passion, and we're going to give this person a shot. Second is Porter's competitive forces model. Michael Porter is a Harvard University professor who wrote a number of books, a lot of papers about the competitive forces model. We don't have time to get into all 5 forces here, but I would highly recommend that you look up Michael Porter and look into the competitive forces model and use it to analyze where the strengths and the weaknesses are, not only of the industry, but also of the company that you're taking a look at or the organization you're trying to get into. The third thing is the industry life cycle. Where's the industry going? Is it dying out or is it growing? I'd give an example of, the guy that invested in a bunch of payphones back right around the time that the cell phone was invented. Bad timing, just bad timing. Hopefully he didn't make a career change or didn't invest in something like that, but you really need to analyze where is this industry now, and are opportunities going to be there not only now, but in the future. The last thing you want to do is switch careers and find out this industry is going away, it's dying, and then you're going to have to switch careers again. Last thing is do a macro environment analysis of the industry. So these are the areas that you're looking at: the social, political, legal, technological, economic, demographic, and global. Each one of those, look at them very closely. Today we're seeing huge changes in the social environment, in the political environment especially. Technological has been going crazy for decades and will continue to go crazy for decades. Currently, we're seeing some real economic situations that don't appear to be great at this point. Things aren't going in the right direction with the pandemic and all that. So analyze these things individually. And I think when you do that, you'll come up with a really great list of what type of opportunities and what type of threats exist in the industry and the career that you're attempting to pursue. Item 2, create a roadmap and a timeline. You want to create a plan of action that parallels the financial wherewithal that you have to complete that plan. And this is important You don't want to get to the point where you're halfway through building up the knowledge base, the skill sets and everything, and now you've run out of money and you have to go get a second job or go work overtime and you don't have time to continue to pursue your career change dream. So when you build that plan, the plan of action, make sure that it matches your financial wherewithal to be able to move along that plan. So if you think it's going to take you 6 months, then you have to have enough financial backing to go 6 months. A year, you have to have financial backing to go a year, etc. Then, to just say on the second bullet point, place all those requirements on a timeline so that when it comes time for you to be interviewed and do your interviewing processes, you're ready. You'll be a strong candidate. Third is seek a mentor. You may think, well, I don't know anybody in that field, and how can I get a mentor if I don't know anybody? Well, you don't have to know somebody. You just have to know somebody who knows somebody. And you'd be really surprised at the people who are so willing to help you succeed. I'll give you a quick example. When I was looking at moving into being a head basketball coach at the college level, I didn't know this guy. He was an absolutely great coach. He was the coach at Southwest Missouri State and was really successful, moved on to St. Louis University where he had tremendous success there too. His name was Charlie Spoonhour. I didn't know Charlie from Adam, but I called him and made an appointment with his secretary and just asked for an hour, hour and a half to let me pick his brain. And he not only gave me that time, he was so gracious and so helpful. And it was just, he took that time out of his day and allowed me to learn from him. A great mentorship, really was. And so I didn't know him. It was a cold call. I found out later that I did have friends who could have made that contact for me. But think about who would be a good mentor for you and talk to your network and see if they can help find someone like that for you. Now, you got to be careful, and especially if you're on a current job and you don't want the people at your current company or organization to know that you're thinking about a career change. So you got to be pretty selective on who you bring into your circle and ask for these types of assistance, not only for mentorship, but also doing the SWOT analysis that I talked about before on your strengths and weaknesses. Item 4 is develop a fallback position if it doesn't work out. So if you get to the end of the timeline, you got to have a plan B. You have to. You have to put food on the table. If you're continuing on your regular job, that's not a problem. But if you have to quit your job in order to get prepared to make this career change, you have to have a plan to say, okay, is there a way I can get back to my old job, or is there a way I can get back to a job similar to my old job with another firm, etc. But plan that out. Here's some inspirational quotes for step 2, and I won't go through all of these, but one of them that I like is, and you're going to find yourself in this position if you do make a career change. It's the third one on there from Mother Teresa. She says, I know God will not give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much. And you're going to be at your wit's end sometimes, especially early in your career change switch. And you're going to think exactly that. My goodness, I'm not sure I can handle this. But you can. You can. With the right type of support from your family and friends, you'll make it just fine. And I throw in a few that I think are kind of funny. I absolutely love Rodney Dangerfield. He is, I can listen to him say the same jokes over and over, and I laugh just as hard every time. He's crazy, absolutely crazy. But he says, We sleep in separate rooms. We have dinner apart. We take separate vacations. We're doing everything we can to keep our marriage together. Hopefully you won't be in that type of position if you're making a career change and your spouse is struggling with it somewhat. I just love this man, and he's just done so much to bring smiles to people's faces. So kind of keep that in mind as you're going through this. Don't be constantly so serious. Lighten up every once in a while. And if you can't lighten up, do some YouTube looking for Rodney Dangerfield. He'll lighten it up for you. Step 3 is give it 100%. Being a college coach, I'm familiar with 100%. There's a term that is used quite often. I gave it 110%. I never bought that. You can't. My degree in undergrad was math, and there was no such thing as 110%. 100% was everything. You can't go more than that. So give it everything. And in my book, in chapter 11, the lesson at the end of that chapter is simply strive every day to do your best. If you do that, then you can walk away with your head held high, and you're going to know that you gave it everything you had. And if you were successful, that's great, and you probably will be successful. But if you're not, you've done everything you could, and you just move in another direction. The quote that I like is, "What you have become is the price you paid to get what you used to want." In other words, if you don't give it everything you have, then you're going to get what you deserve. In giving it 100%, you got to be really passionate about, as I say here, passionate about your journey. First of all, you want to update your resume and tailor it to the position that you're striving for. And then secondly, work your network and your friends and your family's networks. And find those sponsors who are, they're going to be out there, that they're people that can open doors for you. You may not know them, but someone in your network will. And again, Americans are good-hearted people. They're willing to help you if they believe that you do have a passion for this and that's your true dream, your desire. They're going to do things to try and help you get there. So don't hesitate to use your family, friends, networks to help you find some sponsors to make it a little bit easier for you to get where you need to go. The third thing, practice your interviewing skills. The last thing you want to happen is get into an interview and not have an answer. So when the interviewer says to you, "Now, let me get this right. You've never worked in this area before, and you think I should hire you? Why is that?" You better have a good answer for that. And most of the time when you reach back about your passion, it's something you really want to do, show them examples of your work ethic, show them examples of things you've done in the past that really weren't in your wheelhouse. You were still successful. But think about those types of answers to those types of questions. Then the last thing, if you can do this, this is probably the easiest way to get hired in an area where you don't have experience, is search out an internship of some sort. It doesn't have to be paid. If it is, that's great, but you can work for free for a short period of time in a lot of cases. And it's going to allow you to show your stuff. If you can show that company, organization, firm, whatever, that you've got the passion, you've got the work ethic, you've got the desire, and you're going to show them you actually have the aptitude, they're going to say, "Golly, this person's doing great on this internship. We need to hire this person." So give that consideration also. Here's some inspirational quotes for the step 3. The third one on here, "He that can endure the bad will not live to see the good. Know that that's going to happen while you're pursuing this. You're going to go through some bad times, probably. And you got to be able to weather it. So if you've got a good support system, you've got a great attitude, you have a serious, serious passion for this, you're going to make it through the bad times. And you will live to see the good. So in summary, a career change, when somebody moves to a totally different profession or occupation, the 3 steps that we've gone through to talk about making that career change happen is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, build a foundation for success, and then give it everything you have to make it successful. Now, the final quote that I'm going to leave you with, I want you to think about this. Fear regret more than failure. What you don't want is when you get to the end of your work life and you look back and you think, I really wish I would have done X, Y, Z instead of A, B, C. And the reason you didn't try those things because you were afraid to fail. Don't let that happen to you. Just don't let that happen to you. If you really have a passion, follow these steps, put things in place, and go for it. I hope you've enjoyed this short session. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My website is www.drjoebrickner.com. It's drjoebrickner.com. My email, if you want to email me, I'd be happy to try and help you maybe move forward or give you some directions on, or some ideas, whatever. You can contact me on drjoebrickner@gmail.com. Again, it's been a pleasure visiting, and I wish you nothing but the best. Happy success.